One of the categories in crypto that we talked a lot about in really Q4 of this year, and more specifically in the later half of this year, was privacy and the privacy meta, privacy coins. And it really all started back in early October with the rise of Zcash. And out of that, we talked about some multiple different, I would say, beta plays or additional runners that were going to arise with the likes of Zcash. We talked about Dash early, we talked about Decred early, we talked about Horizon early, and each one of those, and when you look at the timeline of what does Q4 of 2025 look like, it is privacy in and out. And going into 2026, it still is the privacy meta. We're going to talk about why this is very important, how to set yourself up to be successful for crypto, and looking at the categories that are doing well at the tail end of this year, going into 2026, how to prepare yourself and some of the opportunities and early opportunities that exist out there, especially for tokens that still, or for projects that still don't have tokens. All that and more in today's video. If you're new here, my name is Alex, talk about crypto news, crypto passive income. If you enjoy content like that, consider subscribing. If you enjoyed this video, smash up the like. Without further ado, let's into the video. If you were to recap 2025 in a nutshell, I would say the majority of the excitement was in Q4, primarily in October with the rise of Zcash, where it essentially went from, I believe, around $30 to $40 all the way nearly to $800 at its all-time high. Now, we talked about Zcash on the channel sub $200, a little late, but little late is better than never. And we talked about a lot of these different opportunities, a lot about different privacy coins. You can see this back here, very early on it, talking about some of these opportunities, 3 different altcoins, talking about privacy coins that had a lot of potential. And really in privacy, this has been one of the biggest sectors in 2025. There have been other things such as perp dexes that we've talked about as well, because you have to be very, when you look at Bitcoin specifically, and you look at the performance of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is down over the course of the entire year. When you look at altcoins are mostly down over the course of the entire year. There's only been a few sectors that are the outliers, and that is perp dexes and the likes of privacy coins. And when you're looking into 2026, you have to kind of understand what is ahead and how to prepare for it. So for example, Zcash, we'll look at a few of them in this video. At the very end, we're going to highlight 2 of them that are new. One just had its mainnet just recently, and the other one is still kind of in its growth phase. But the earlier you get to these, the better. That said, Zcash had a massive announcement earlier today with the NASDAQ-listed Cypherpunk Technologies, which is backed by Winklevoss Capital, which is the Winklevoss twins, added nearly $29 million worth of Zcash to its holdings. They're aiming for 5% of the total supply. So what you are seeing with the accumulation of Ethereum, which is going terribly wrong, what we're seeing very similar, where the likes of Cypherpunk is looking to obtain 5% of Zcash supply. So I think I think overall there's still going to be a lot of bullishness. Mind you, this was as of 2 hours ago. Very recent news. There's a lot of bullishness on privacy going into 2026, and at a time where most of the market was pretty dismal. Most of the market was pretty sad. You see, according to the latest top performers and Grayscale's research, Zcash leading despite the broadly negative market conditions. The markets just have been awful. And amongst all this, very few assets have risen in price. We've talked about Zcash, we've talked about Monero, we talked about Dash, we talked about Decred. All of these are some of the top performing assets in this quarter, and I would say out of the top 12, or at least half of them are ones that we've talked about on this channel. So there's a lot of opportunities, but you have to be very picky going into 2026. It's the same type of mindset, even if be picky whether it's a bull market or bear market, but you have to be even more picky in times of a bear market if you're trying to find the winners. And so This is A16Z, literally explaining why privacy is the only moat left in crypto and crypto money, the most important moat in crypto, and why this is such a focus for A16Z, which is one of the largest venture capitals in the world. And in fact, the last project we're talking about in today's video is backed by A16Z. So we'll look at that in just a second. But this is summed up very beautifully as far as the biggest narratives going into 2026. Privacy, prediction markets, we've talked about that as well, AI, and space. And so privacy is going to be huge, especially in the crypto space. And I want to first kick it off with the likes of Midnight. Now, Midnight has done extremely well, all considered, with these market conditions. And I don't think this report highlights Night in this. And Night recently had a TGE, so maybe it didn't have the full 90 days. And mind you, it was a bit volatile when it launched. Yeah, so December 9th, right? So it was a bit volatile when it launched. Mind you, this is on some exchanges, similar to what you saw with the lighter launch. It went all the way to $8, $9 on some exchanges. But realistically, it launched, what we saw with the likes of Midnight was around the 3 to 4 cent range. It's done very, very well since then, up significantly. And mind you, over this past month, you can't really calculate that, but over the past week, up 26%, and doing well, all things considered, with the current market conditions, and not selling off a whole lot, even though some people had the opportunity to unlock. That said, one thing to keep your eye on going into 2026, if you're bullish on Midnight, which is privacy coin within the Cardano ecosystem, is two things. One, there's a lot of bullish things on his timeline, but two, you're going to have a lot of people who mined at night because the unlocks were a randomized order between 1 and 90 days. So your wallet could have gotten an unlock on day 5, so you would already be unlocked at this point, or your day was 68 or 75, and you're waiting 75 days for an unlock. So for example, one of my wallets is waiting until February 14th, Valentine's Day, for my first unlock. That is just simply the randomized order. So be mindful, there are going to be people who are getting tokens unlocked that may be selling those tokens after having mined them during the scavenger mine period. So be mindful of that as some potential selling pressure for Midnight. But overall, there's a lot of very bullish things happening for Night, especially with the backing directly from the Cardano ecosystem. They are going to be massive, a ton of stuff that they're doing in Japan. I mean, the entire calendar for January and February is full for a Midnight Japan tour. So this is going to be very, very busy. I think it's going to bring a lot of attention to Midnight overall. Now, outside of the likes of Night, the other privacy coin a lot of people are going to be paying attention to is most likely going to be Zcash, because it is one of, it's not, I think from a market cap perspective, maybe Zcash is higher than Monero. Let me see here. It was at one point. Maybe it's, yeah, it's right there. It is 8.6 billion versus 8.1 billion. So very, very close to the likes of Monero. If you look at the fully diluted valuation, what you're going to see with Monero, the fully diluted valuation is there's not as much inflation coming to Monero as there is going to be some inflation coming to the likes of Zcash. So a little bit different, not a ton of inflation. Most of it is unlocked, but not all the supply is currently unlocked. So be mindful of that. But anyways, Zcash still by far the largest privacy coin. And what Zcash does is going to impact the broader sector. If Zcash runs, you're going to see privacy coins run in general. But I think more of your beta plays to likes of Dash, Decrypt, and what you're going to have with like Horizon, maybe Railgun, and a few others that are more smaller market cap that are going to run just because Zcash is running. I think a project like Midnight is big enough to stand on its own that yes, it will run, but it kind of will do its own thing regardless of whether Zcash is pumping or not, because of how much they've got going on within their own ecosystem and their backing by Charles. So either way, highly recommend that you keep an eye on these two. And the last one I want to highlight before we get into this last project that has a token right now, this is a pretty big deal, right? When you look at the average price that Cypherpunk has acquired Zcash is at $514, which I think is absolutely expensive. That is a ton of Zcash at an average price of $514. Now, mind you, Zcash sitting right now at $524, so they're in the profit. By the way, that is a expensive price to pay for Zcash, which in their mindset, obviously their goal is for Zcash to be significantly greater than this price, which makes it very bullish. The same way that people look at Michael Saylor acquiring Bitcoin, very low cost, expecting it to be significantly higher down the road. You're seeing the same thing happen with the likes of Cypherpunk, which is acquiring Zcash with expectations of prices being higher, which I think there's a higher chance for Zcash from the upside opportunity. For Zcash to go back to $750, I think has a higher likelihood than for Bitcoin to go to new all-time highs. I think that's just simply the mentality of the market and where things are right now. I think there's a lot of opportunity because you've already seen Zcash outperform at a time where not the rest of the market, but even Bitcoin performed poorly in one of its worst quarters in Q4. So either way, highly recommend that you keep an eye on Zcash. Now, the other project we also talked about recently is called Canton. Now, we talked about Canton about 10 cents, and it has been doing extremely well. It was sitting right around here, and then it just started breaking out all the way to 14 cents. I think this is one that definitely can go significantly higher. And some of the reason behind it is its partnerships are insane. Because what you have with the likes of Canton is far beyond what has been achieved by the likes of Zcash or even achieved by the likes of Midnight. And we're going to look at that in just a second. But Canton is sitting at a $5.45 billion market cap. How much more upside does it potentially have is kind of in question because, at this point, it's almost up there with the likes of Zcash. Even if it goes double where it's at right now, it's at a $10 billion market cap. It's almost in the top 20. So it is already massive by all measures. But I think there's still some potential. The fully diluted valuation isn't insane. But why has Canton been rising? Well, there's two reasons for it. More recently, you had this announcement December 17th that the minting and using US Treasuries on Canton is coming in 2026. They partnered with DTCC and Digital Asset are bringing tokenized US Treasuries to Canton. This is absolutely huge. This is a partnership on another level that you've not seen in the likes of Zcash or Midnight or any other privacy coin. This is huge, at least in my opinion. It's enabling tokenized USTs to be exchanged in near real time with stablecoins and other digital assets, all with privacy and controlled regulated markets. That, to me, is absolutely huge. And one of the reasons why we're seeing Canton rise, why it makes sense for it to be higher than where it is right now. But the bigger question is how much higher, right? You don't necessarily want to be the person that is top blasting something like this. But on the other end, you would have other people that are saying, top blasting it here at 10 cents would have been 10, 11 cents would also be a bad idea at all-time highs here. Who knows? We may be seeing, another setup where this right here at, well, that was terrible. This right here at 14 cents is like we were at here at 10, 11 cents. And who knows, we're going to be at 18, 19 cents before we know it. So definitely possible, but just consider the fact that its market cap is already massive. Now, the last two things that I want to highlight and last two projects I want to highlight, before you get to that, this was a massive partnership as well, that NASDAQ is reportedly going big on blockchain in 2026, and that NASDAQ is being formally proposed to join Canton Network as a super validator. That will be interesting. But let's move on to these last two. The first being Zama. Zama is one that's announced earlier today that it went on mainnet, and they completed the very first confidential stablecoin transfer on Ethereum. This is huge. This is a big deal. Zama is one that there are some speculations about a potential airdrop. Highly recommend that you do your own research and due diligence in this project, but it's one that is, I would say, going to be up there with the likes of Midnight and some of these other top tier privacy coins that are out there. They are doing some really impressive stuff. We may have a future video on this just dedicated to Zama, but one that I'll leave a link down below for you to go and check it out. and do your own research. And then last but not least is Miden Network. Now, Miden is also in the privacy meta. Earlier this year in April, they announced an initial $25 million seed fundraise and a spin out of Polygon. So it is an interesting approach. They also have backing. This is the one I was talking about at the beginning of the video, that is backed by A16Z with their big focus and their expectation for the likes of privacy to be a huge factor for crypto moving forward. Currently, Miden is in testnet. So that being said, I'd love to hear your thoughts on 2026. What categories of crypto do you think are going to perform the best? Do you think privacy meta is still going to be a thing? If so, which one are you most excited about? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, smash up a like. You enjoy content like this, consider subscribing. Until next time, guys, stay invested.